And this comes as moments ago, the CDC bluntly warned Americans against traveling this Thanksgiving. Obviously, the president's personal epidemiologist on this, or he's not a real epidemiologist, Scott Atlas, is giving the exact opposite guidance. So hopefully this task force briefing might clear something up. As the weather gets colder, and the leaves are falling and winter approaches, we are experiencing what you could call the fall of America.
Welcome, Chuck Todd in complete meltdown after the talked about the press conference today. The president's lawyers also the first task force meeting, at least public task force meeting and press conference in a while. Chuck Todd and the rest of the mainstream media, MSNBC, did not cover the press conference. Welcome to the War Room, Thursday, the 19th of November, the year of our Lord, 2020. We have a special guest host in studio this afternoon, Congressman Matt Gaetz. Actually, Gaetz sold, this is a great thing about the audience, sold so many books, a firebrand. He was so amazed and mesmerized, had to come back over and thank us.
I'm like a stray cat, but instead of feeding me, if you sell my books, I just keep returning and coming back.
We love it. Okay, we've got Boris Epshteyn from the campaign's legal team. You had let's put the tweet up. Is it Chris Krebs? Krebs just left DHS. I guess he was summarily fired. He just left DHS en route to Silicon Valley, and his tweet, what did he say, is the scariest hour and a half in the history of American television?
Something to that effect.
Words to that effect.
He clearly didn't see my HBO documentary, The Swamp, which is also available on Amazon.
I want the merch and license rights for Gaetz. Okay, let's go to Boris Epshteyn. Boris, walk us through what you guys said today, the case you laid out, and why a guy like Krebs, who up until 24 hours ago was in charge of voter security and said everything was fine. This, in fact, the most secure in American history, and I don't know what Rudy Giuliani, Boris, and particularly Sidney Powell, who's scared him. So what went on today?
Well, first of all, I thought I looked pretty damn handsome up there, Bannon. What did you think?
It was not too shabby. Not too shabby.
I put on the pictures just for you.
Of course, I'm comparing you to Joe Genova. That's okay. Joe's a friend.
Joe's the best.
He's the best. That's. You had some original gangsters. You had some original gangsters up there. Joe and Victoria, Rudy Giuliani.
Sure. We had Sydney and Jenna, and I was over to the side, kind of looking like security, but we had a good time. Steve, good to be with you. Matt, always great to be with you, my friend, and the rest of the War Room team. So here's the deal: Rudy Giuliani went up there and presented a broad case of fraud all across this country, and evidence of fraud, which are the affidavits in Pennsylvania, in Michigan, the petition in Wisconsin. And I will tell you, being up there and listening to it all, being in the room, you could tell that even the reporters were taken aback by the amount of hard evidence, the 682,000 plus mail-in ballots that weren't observed in Pennsylvania, the Wayne County issue in Michigan, the 60,000 absentee ballots that may not have been applied for in Milwaukee County alone in Wisconsin, the thousands of ballots being found in Georgia. You could tell that even the press was taken aback. Whoa, this is some real stuff here. And so the mayor went up there and he laid out this broad, in-depth case. Then you had Sidney Powell talk about Dominion in more detail than we've heard up to now. And then you had Jenna sum it up all together. And then, of course, we had the sparring session of the question and answer. And I thought Rudy was a lot like Rocky at the end of each Rocky movie, up to the fifth one, and he knocked them all out.
Hey, Boris, this is Matt Gaetz, and I wanted to ask this question. How do you believe this evidence will initially ripen? So walk us through like the preview of coming attractions. What is the first evidentiary hearing where we have evidence being admitted? Is it on some sort of motion for temporary injunction? And because, of course, we know there's the legal standard of irreparable harm, substantial likelihood of success on the merits. Walk us through what you think will be next in the procedural posture of the litigation.
Great question, Congressman. So in Pennsylvania, where I was with the mayor on Tuesday, that was a motion to dismiss brought by the defendants. And their cadre of every fancy law firm.
None of that's
you ever
evidentiary,
heard
though.
of.
Those are
They're
all
going
just
up to
judgments on the
Williamsport
pleadings.
to argue. Well, no, but hold on. Let me finish. So that was a motion to dismiss on the First amended complaint. Now we put forward a Second Amendment complaint, and we absolutely hope and expect to get through the motion to dismiss, and we'll get to present evidence on that Second Amended complaint, both on our watchers in Pennsylvania not being allowed to observe, as well as Republican voters being treated differently in terms of not being able to cure their ballots than Democrat voters. So that's in Pennsylvania. In Michigan, we pulled back our federal lawsuit today because we got the result we wanted in Wayne County, which is the lack of certification. There's still a state lawsuit ongoing in Michigan. In Nevada, you've got the action that was put into place 2 days ago, again on Tuesday, and as part of that action in Nevada, there will be significant evidence that will have to be presented.
That's where I'd want my first evidentiary hearing.
Would be where?
Nevada, right? I mean, because you look at the case in Nevada, it's so verifiable that these people voted in more than one place, and that they voted after the national change of address database signified that they had an intent to live somewhere else. And so it seems like if I was the Trump legal team, I'd be looking to get into an evidentiary hearing in Nevada as fast as possible.
Because you're saying you got to put up a win. You got to put up a victory.
Beyond just this litigation
you
over the
gotta look
pleadings. You see, like these motions to dismiss,
You've
that's
gotta
all
look
lawyer
at
talk for
Wisconsin,
have you made sufficient allegations? Making sufficient allegations is a different question than evidencing those allegations. And when you just look at the timetable for the Electoral College, you got to back off of that and say there's a certain amount of relief you got to obtain before you get to the certification of the Electoral College before the Congress. And so to obtain that relief, you have to get evidence before a court. And so far, largely the litigation has been about the sufficiency of the allegations, not the credibility of the evidence. And I know that's what Boris and the rest of the team is eager to get to.
And you're making a case that you're making the point that you're burning daylight right now, right? That in particular with Thanksgiving coming up, this has got to happen the next 72 hours.
Well, look,
hold on.
I don't know about
Let's
that.
take a quick step back on that, real quick. Because it's not us that wants to argue the motions to dismiss, right? And the congressman will agree to that.
It's them.
It's the other side that keeps bringing it. And we can't not argue those, because if we don't, then we get thrown out of court. So it's the other side that's bringing these now. Where I agree with the congressman 100% is that Nevada is ripe, but also we keep a close eye on Wisconsin, folks. I know information from there, and the mayor laid out some of it, which is extremely direct, black and white. In Wisconsin, there's no mail-in voting, absentee voting by right. It's a privilege. You have to apply to get an absentee ballot. Our information tells us that when this audit of Milwaukee County is done, you will see up to 60,000 votes, which were put forward by those people who did not apply to vote absentee or mail-in. So
and are those ballots segregated?
Did you look at the voter roll?
Do we know, Boris, if those ballots are segregated?
That's why we're doing the audit of
Because I think that's going to be the key.
Well,
I think you guys are going to be able to
that's what
prove that. A lot of evidence seems to suggest that these ballots should have never been voted. The question is, have those ballots been commingled with other ballots? And I don't know the answer to that question. We might have to get some folks under oath, under some sort of expedited discovery right away.
Well, that's why we're doing the audit there, right? And the campaign, the president, we put our money where our mouths are. $3 million went over to Wisconsin yesterday, and we're paying for that audit ahead of time in Milwaukee County and in Dane County, where Madison is. And what they're going to do is they're going to look at the voter rolls of people who voted. Then they're going to look at the application list. And guess what? We fully expect that when you look at the voter rolls, you're going to have tens of thousands of people on the rolls who did not put forward or were not granted their application to vote absentee and mail-in. And that's a very simple comparison to be made. So that is, key information, that is key evidence that I think is supposed to come. Those votes get thrown out. They're illegal votes. And we're only down 20,000. And we're talking about Milwaukee.
And do we know where those votes are? Am I asking the question right, Steve?
Yeah.
Milwaukee and Dane.
No. His question.
Milwaukee and Dane County.
No, we understand geographically.
That's why we're doing the audit there.
You understand? Yeah, it's not that geographically we know where you're focused. It's that, like Pennsylvania, are they in a pile that's been mingled? They're separated from the envelope and separated from the chain of custody of the guys that didn't actually request it. They went to them and they requested they do it. right? The 290,000 that are in the nursing homes or whatever. The question is that the congressman's asking, just like in Pennsylvania, have you already if it's already mingled, how do you unmingle them physically to actually know that one's assigned to a certain person who shouldn't have been eligible to do that vote?
Because there's a list of everybody who votes absentee mail-in. There's a list. It's in every state. Every state has a list, okay? And that list will provide us the names of people who mail-in. There's a list of applications in Wisconsin because, again, it's not by right. It's a privilege. And all you got to do is compare and contrast the list. And anybody who voted who's not on the granted list, their vote is thrown out. And again, we're looking at Milwaukee and Dane County, where it's 70-30, maybe even 80-20 Biden to Trump, and the difference in the whole state is only 20,000. So do the math. That just Milwaukee County could easily change Wisconsin. And then you have to add Dane County, where we believe there's 40,000 more of those votes. So 100,000 total illegal votes is what we believe we could see at the end of this audit.
The American people are going to go nuts
Does
if
that make
this turns
sense?
out like the FISA thing, where like we get all this evidence of all this fraud and we get all these reports that all these bad things happened, and then at the end of the day, some judge, some adjudicator somewhere says, yeah, but we just got to sort of keep marching along anyway. I'm so glad Boris is out there fighting him. Who's fighting with you in Wisconsin?
We've got a great lawyer in Wisconsin. I don't want to say his name because I'm sure he's on the pleadings, but I want to make it easy for the disgusting haters on the left to go and attack. But we've got a great lawyer in Wisconsin, great team down there, and there was a victory that was made last night, which was in the middle of the night. The Wisconsin Board of Elections, as soon as we paid for this audit, they try to go in, the Wisconsin Election Commission tried to go in and change the rules to make it harder to object to a vote. Well, our people went in there, they argued the case, and it ended up being tied, and the original rules apply. And that was actually a major, major victory for those who want free and fair elections and elections full of integrity in this country, because the rules that stood yesterday stand today, and those are the rules that will be applied to this audit. And that was a major victory for President Trump and all America yesterday in Wisconsin.
I know you got to bounce. One question: the holistic approach here. There's some word out that the president may have some of the state senators or the head of the state senate in Michigan come to the White House. There's talk about rallies. You guys did a great job today in presenting the facts, right? And I think people's heads were blowing up. Of course, they tried to spin it about Rudy's hair dye and other things, but you actually look at the throwdown, it's pretty impressive. What are you guys doing in it? Because I know you're a media guy. What are you doing to put forward the whole package so people can understand it better, and it starts to get people more than the people on the right, they're Trump supporters, starting to get them jacked up about what happened here?
Well, first of all, let me tell you something. Standing there next to the mayor, and he was looking good. We're all working up a sweat. And we're in a fight here. We're in a full-fledged fight, and we're going to continue that fight. And we're doing it in the courts, and we're doing it in the media. I'm doing about 15 interviews today on TV, on radio. Always here on with you, Stephen. What are you, the number 2 most popular podcast now in the country? So,
and he's going to take Call Her Daddy down one of these days.
Boris,
what'd you say?
Yeah, we're going to take Call Her Daddy down. We're going to jump ahead of that. Boris.
Does anybody
that's number one.
Does anybody have any lonely heart questions for me? Because I know that's what Bannon's missing.
Yeah, we know you got a bolt, Boris. Thank you very much. We're going to put your social media up in the next segment. Thank you very much for taking time. We know you're pressed for time. Fantastic. Say hi to the mayor. We'll be back in a moment with our co-host.
Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room. Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back to the War Room. Boris makes a very compelling case, but brother Matt Gaetz, besides being the firebrand, seriously, I want everybody to get this book, and here's the reason. You got to see who the fighters are, right? They're fighters, and then there are people that kind of sit on the sideline and cheer. There's not a lot of people who want to go down and get into it every day, and they blow Matt Gaetz up daily. And he thrives off it, which is a unique talent, right? Donald Trump has that. Not a lot of people have it. A lot of people just can't take it. It's just too much, right? It gets too personal. It's just too much. And one of the things I know that you've got a son and you've done an incredible job. And look, you've done a great job of raising this boy. He's the all-American kid. I was so impressed first time I met him. I said, man, because you can always tell the quality of the parents by how and the kid's so squared away. And they came after you for your son. It's just everything. You can't do anything you're going to do. They're going to come after you. It's like these people. We can't even announce who the lawyers are. They're in the pleadings because they're afraid they'll get doxxed and beat up. So that's why you got to get Gaetz's book, Firebrand. You'll learn a lot about just the way things are, right? And I noticed, and you said it earlier about getting the applause, but I noticed when Trump put it on his shoulders at the end in the final 3 weeks, it was just him driving this thing. I would look at the thing because I'd watch them all and I'd see you kind of had what I would do is wander around the sides of it and kind of observe, watch the crowd, watch the audience, see what they're moving for, see what's moving them. You were asking some questions there. And Boris did a great job as being a lawyer and not answering them.
Oh no, I thought he gave good answers.
No, what's the point you're trying to get? You're trying to get to a point for a reason. What are you trying to let the audience know?
I'm concerned that despite the ability to show irregularity, to show illegal voting, illegal ballots, ballot laundering, that the remedy, the thing that we have to ask the court to do, is something that a court would be willing to do. And to date, there is not evidence that a court is willing to discount a batch of ballots because some of the ballots within that batch are illegal. Based on the margins in these states, and they are ever changing because I think they're still finding votes in the Okefenokee Swamp in Georgia, but based on the current margins, you're going to need large swaths of illegal ballots thrown out. Now, again, I mentioned the litigation in Nevada because I think there it's a very C-spot run train of evidence where if someone has, gone somewhere and voted in another state, then it's very clear that that's happened. But then how do you go find their illegal vote in Nevada and unwind that from the place where it currently exists? The failure here was we didn't catch these guys on the front end, Steve. I mean, honestly, you've got to catch this kind of fraud as it's happening. It's not the type of thing afterwards where you can easily maintain that chain of evidence. And I think that's why I asked Boris, what is the first evidentiary hearing where we are going to be able to go get certified evidence reviewed? Because right now, he's right. It's the Democrats, their lawyers, who are litigate the sufficiency of pleadings rather than getting to the introduction of evidence.
Do you think that in Pennsylvania and in Michigan, the problem will get to be that they took them out of the envelopes, they mingled them with the other votes, and it's just too big a leap for a judge to sit there and go, hey, I understand there are illegal votes there. There are votes with no chain of title. The votes that shouldn't be there.
But what can I do?
But I can't unwind it, right? In Wisconsin, I can't unwind it.
And by the way, the Democrats knew this, which is why they blocked the observers.
And that's why they mingled the ballots.
Exactly. They were throwing out the observers and mingling the ballots by the hundreds of thousands as fast as they could. Now, you can't do that in Florida under our laws because we scrutinize the mail-in ballots as they're coming in. So you don't have batches of hundreds of thousands that you're processing at one time very quickly as you're excluding the observers. You're doing them in daily batches, and that allows greater clarity and greater checks on the authenticity.
And as a profile in courage, you don't see, as you view it today, a state assembly, a group of legislators, not putting up an alternative slate of electors, but just saying, we can't certify this, we want to kick it to, we want to go past the safe harbor, not send electors to the Electoral College, and let you guys, let Congress, let the House deal with it in January.
Well, Steve, I think you've just given the listeners the true legal strategy. I mean, what I think is happening here is that with just the total failure of these elections processes to validate legal ballots, that there is such a broad concern among legislators that they would take an extraordinary action. I mean, that is an extraordinary action.
Not to certify what the state did, but then again, not to put up an alternative slate of electors and just say, hey, there's a remedy for this. The remedy resides in the House. It's been done twice, only once after 1876 or in 1876 when this was set up. Do you think in Michigan and Pennsylvania, Republican-controlled legislators would have these stones to say, hey, we got to deal with these mingled ballots, right? It's just that you can't let it be stolen like this,
Well,
and just say
if they
we're not gonna
don't,
do
Steve, where we're at is basically like if you can cheat in real time and you don't get caught in real time, you get the power in this country. Like that will be the conclusion of this story if that willingness to demand greater review and transparency doesn't germinate from state legislatures.
Do you think you're someone at a young age that has dedicated your life to public service, right? You could go and make a ton of money in other places. You've dedicated to public service. Do you think that this country is at that place right now that this is basically Nietzschean will to power, and whoever can take the power takes the power, and that's just, we put a happy face on it and we talk about all the Constitution and everything like that, but let's be blunt. This is about power, and this country rewards those who take it.
I believe the ballot laundering process that was mechanized by Democrats, facilitated by their goons who threw out observers, that's precisely how they view the world. I don't know that the right views it that way, but I think the left sure does.
And so if we, as the forces of light, don't throw down, forget the future, throw down hard in this moment of time right here and see who's on our side of the football, you're saying if we allow this to happen, it's lost? Not just this election, but what this republic stands for.
I am always an optimist about the future of America, so I won't join you to that level of dismay, but I do believe that the fundamental notion that we ought to be able to trust the election process is what is at issue here. And I think that we could be headed toward sort of a swirling series of complex remedies and not a true vindication.
You were on the plane on Air Force One and went around the country in something that was equivalent to a Great Awakening. 96-mile caravans in Arizona, 30,000 Latinos and Hispanic is coming out for anti-communism. Butler, Pennsylvania, 54,000 people, and dozens of other examples. You saw it. When will we ever have a candidate that is so tough, so larger than life, such a command presence, whether you like him or not, as Donald Trump? If you can't do it here, you're never going to when are we going to have this again? If you lose it here for your set of facts of a pure power move, smash mouth, hey, and guess what? MSNBC and CNN's not even going to cover the press conference. We don't need to cover the press conference. We could care less about Wisconsin. We want it, and we're going to take it. If you can't back a Trump who's a carnivore, when are we going to do this again?
Well, we need to just bottle that and inject it into the veins of the state legislators in some of these disputed places, Steve. But I honestly appreciate how hard President Trump fights for the rest of us. And frankly, I think the party needs to make sure we're fighting just as hard, not just for him, but for the future of the electoral process.
Okay, a new paper, a new online site opened today in Georgia. Michael Patrick Leahy is the proprietor that's launched them all over the country. Leahy, Media Matters has already lit you up. So tell us, what did you do in Georgia, and why are they melting down, and what's the purpose of it?
Well, in conjunction with our partner John Fredericks, John Fredericks Radio Network, we've launched the Georgia Star News. And the good news is we're based in Atlanta. We have two great reporters on the ground right now doing great stories that no one else is doing. Basic things about this recount, about the special runoff elections coming in January. We're reporting it, and no one else is down there reporting it from a conservative perspective. We've already got 10 advertisers in our first day of launch. There's a big demand for this. And obviously Media Matters doesn't like us because they don't want the truth out there. They don't like me, they don't like you, they don't like John Fredericks.
They also do not like me.
Yeah, no, you're on the short list. Leahy, yeah, this is Gaetz with us. Leahy, tell us about what is the story down there? Why did you got about 90 seconds? So what's the story? Why would you start a paper just for this recount or this vote that's coming up? What is the story in Georgia?
Well, it's not just for the recount. I mean, we are the only network of state and local news sites around the country that present conservative news. There's nothing in Georgia. Not a single conservative news site. And our plan all along is to be in the battleground states, and this was just the opportunity. All the eyes of the world are on these runoff elections, on the, quote, recount, or fraud, as sometimes some people are calling it. And John Fredericks and I simultaneously said, we got to be there. He's down there in Atlanta broadcasting Now everybody in the state from the Republican side is there talking to him. We've got 2 reporters, about to be 3, on the ground, going to rallies, going to interviews, going to the Tom Cotton rally today, the Mike Pence rally on Friday. We were actually reporting news that the Atlanta Journal-Constitution won't report.
So what do you think of the governor?
Reporting. That's why we're there.
Is the governor of Georgia doing a good job?
Where is the governor? Where is he? I mean, have you heard?
Well, you're there. I mean, you guys are the ones in Georgia. I was hoping you found him. Maybe you found him with all those extra votes they keep kicking up.
It's a disgrace. Donald Trump made that guy.
I think he's about to have his picture on a milk carton. All right, people are looking for him because he's kind of silent on this issue, and it's really unfortunate that. And of course, it's left to Lynn Wood to file a lawsuit as a voter down there, demanding that the Secretary of State not be allowed to certify these votes because he entered into what one would argue.
Michael, we got to bounce. We'll put the access to the site up next. Colbeck from Michigan with us next.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Okay, we have a co-host joining Greg Manns, Jack Maxey, myself here in the War Room this afternoon. The firebrand Matt Gaetz, Congressman Matt Gaetz, is back for a second. I think he sold so many books. Tell us about your podcast. We have a whole operation. We're now closing in on 20 million. This guy just flicks Vish. He just flicks a thing on. And he's got
2 million.
He's got the hottest one in the country.
I give a take on the day's news each and every day. It's called Hot Takes with Matt Gaetz. Available. Hope folks will check it out. But let's get to this interview.
What time do you put it up every day?
Every day it's up around 3:30, 4 o'clock. So ready for that afternoon drive home if you're still showing up somewhere to work.
Perfect. Okay, we got former State Senator Patrick Colbeck from Michigan. Sir, you saw the press conference. Did you think the case was laid out about what's going on in Michigan? And if not, tell us what they should have added to it.
Well, the key thing to point out in the case for Michigan is that chain of custody is not maintained all the way from the qualified voter file to our voter registration database to the poll books, where they had 3 different versions of the poll books at the Troy-Davie County Board alone, down to the ballots, where they were not maintaining integrity around that. We had ballots delivered in the middle of the night, 61 mail bins without any sort of seal associated with them. And then you get to the basics of a vote tally, which is there's no chain of custody around that. Particularly around paper chain of custody and electronic chain of custody. When you've got the tabulators connected to the internet, there is 0 chain of custody around the vote tally. So is it any wonder why we had strange vote flipping happening in the middle of the night? So that's the key case that we're going off and making, and they hit elements of that today, and primarily we're providing the evidence associated with why we believe that this election was riddled with election fraud.
Senator, this is Congressman Matt Gaetz. Thanks for the great work you're doing, and thanks to the great folks in Michigan who I believe voted for Donald Trump and voted to give him their electors. But help us resolve a question from the last segment. Help us delineate what you think the proper role here is for the courts through hearings and injunctions versus the role of your former colleagues in the state legislature who have arguably a chip in a chair, an opportunity to participate in the process.
Well, I think my colleagues in the state Senate and the state House, one of the key things that they could have done that didn't happen was push back against some of these crazy COVID regulations that were being pursued by our governor, because I saw how that was used specifically to subvert election integrity on Election Day, whether it came to blocking poll challengers from having access to oversee the duplication of military ballots so that they could fit through the tabulation scanners, or whether or not it was some arbitrary 6-foot rule that kept them from actually seeing whether or not a signature could be verified. So that's one thing. But as we go forward in the process, we have a case where our Wayne County Board of Canvassers rejected the certification of the election in Wayne County. That went up the chain. Now it's going up to our state board of canvassers. If they reject it as well, which we hope they will do, because like I said, you can't chain of custody. The purpose of the board of canvassers is to verify the proper completion of records. You can't do that if you haven't verified the chain of custody. If they reject it there, then it goes to the state legislature where by a joint resolution, they're going to go off and allocate electors. So this is a big deal. And so they
is
have
that a
huge
linear
role to
path,
play
Senator?
in that context going forward.
Yeah, let me ask it to you this way.
Yeah,
Do those things
and-
happen simultaneously, and do Americans and Michiganders need to be contacting their legislators now, or is it a court process
Yeah.
followed by a legislative process?
No, it's right now, it is a legislative process, is already decreed, so that is a step 1, step 2, step 3 process. In parallel with that, though, there are several court cases that are making their way through the courts. And as you know, I mean, a court decision or a court order could go off and play a little bit of hooks and chutes and ladders, if you will, with the process and move things in different directions that aren't in accordance with that linear process. So that's something that could be happening. I'm in one of those lawsuits that particularly, my affidavit's focused on the lack of chain of custody around the vote tallies due to the fact that we're connected to the internet.
So
that's
has the state Senate Majority Leader done all he can in this fight, or would there be different things that you would be doing if you were in the Senate to try to advance the cause of election integrity?
There's a lot of things I would be doing differently. I got to say, the Senate Majority Leader right now, Mike Shirkey, I served with him for 4 years. Together we led the passage of right to work in the state of Michigan, so we're not afraid of taking on big issues. But right now, we've got to be bold in our assertions around this election fraud that's happening and make sure that we take that on. They're currently holding joint hearings on the election. They had their first set of those hearings today with public testimony at least, and they're going to have another session tomorrow and next week, and I'm hoping to testify out there. But as far as key courses of action are concerned, there's key questions that we should be asking around the chain of custody. When it comes to the qualified voter file, we never got satisfactory answers around the involvement of Rock the Vote in entering data into our qualified voter file. In Michigan, we found that 8.1 million people voted, yet there's only 7.8 million that are actually eligible to vote. And just to put that in context of the election, there is a difference right now, a vote difference of 146,123 votes in favor of Joe Biden. What happened to all those 300,000 votes? Were they entered in creative writing contests by our folks at Rock the Vote? How did that data get into there? Why is there such a large discrepancy? Those are the questions they should be asking.
What do you mean? Rock the Vote had access to the voter files? What are you talking about? How did they get access to actually? How did that happen?
Very irresponsibly. So our Secretary of State entered into a public-private partnership with Rock the Vote. And for those of you who don't know, Rock the Vote is back in the old MTV days. They target younger demographics that tend to vote Democrat. And so the whole idea was for them to go off and tilt the vote, if you will, in favor of Democratic voters. And so they were given access to provide direct data entry into the qualified voter file, something that no other organization had. So it raises questions. What kind of oversight was provided associated with that? They won't even give us a copy of the contract that Rock the Vote entered into with the state. And so that's huge questions. And that's right at the start of the chain of custody discussion that we were having. That defines who's eligible to vote in the state of Michigan. And so everything downstream, once you breach it anywhere in that chain, you've breached the integrity of the election.
The statewide Board of Electors are tentatively scheduled, or were to meet on Monday afternoon, correct, to certify this. Obviously, they have flexibility in that. When you say step 1, step 2, step 3 in this process, where do we stand? Since you haven't really ascertained whether you can rescind or not rescind. You haven't ascertained whether the vote pre-rescinding was conditioned upon a full audit being done of Wayne County, which they said they were. The Secretary of State completely threw that out, double-dealt them, right? Everything right now is kind of a mess. How do you unwind that so people actually understand what the critical path is?
Well, I think the key thing is for people to get an understanding of some fundamental civics. What is the role of the Board of Canvassers? Most people didn't even know we had a Board of Canvassers until this became an issue. So you got to go off and understand that their goal is not to simply rubber stamp the election process. It's to go off and verify that all the records were properly handled. And when you have in the city of Detroit, where 71% of the absentee voter precincts did not reconcile, which means that they didn't balance their precinct, which means that the number of people eligible to vote and who said that they had voted or they had checked off that had voted in the poll book does not equal the number of ballots that you have in hand. That's a recipe for fraud, because what happens under Michigan election law is that any precinct that does not balance is not sub-count. And so you can make the case, too, that I was there at that Wayne County Board of Canvassers meeting. They got counsel from the Wayne County Board of Canvassers legal counsel that said that that wasn't the case in Michigan law, and that's incorrect. So
yeah, that doesn't sound like a recipe for fraud. That sounds like circumstantial evidence of fraud.
Well, we got lots more where that came from, I can assure you. There's the tough part is triaging and highlighting which elements of fraud you want to go off and highlight. Anybody who denies the existence of fraud in this election, particularly in Michigan, particularly at the Detroit AV Counting Board, where I was there in marathon shift with a lot of volunteers out there, just is not listening and not paying attention.
But it gets back to what Congressman Gaetz asked Boris Epshteyn in the first segment. All of these things were all commingled. So you just have a batch of ballots that people vote. You can't go back and you can't recreate the chain of custody. So what is the remedy? Is it what I've argued? It's non-certification, or is it just guys going to say, hey, look, the problem is it's X percentage. We're just going to have to live with it. Where do you see the remedy coming out?
I think it has to be non-certification. And if that leads to a judge order that says you got to do a revote, so be it. But that's ultimately, how can you certify an election when certification depends on the attestation that you had proper records processing throughout the whole process, and when you know for a fact that you didn't have that? The chain of custody was not preserved, and there's no way they could demonstrate that if they were pressed to go off and provide that information.
And what is your level of confidence that the folks in the Michigan legislature understand that that is the ultimate remedy that is going to have to be accessed here? I mean, are they going to fight? Are they going to do it? Or are they going to roll over? That's the real question, right?
Yeah.
And that is the real question. I can tell you, I've watched them throughout the Governor Whitmer's executive order back on March 23rd, where she locked down our state in an unlawful manner. Even after she was rejected by our Michigan Supreme Court with a 7-0 unanimous ruling, I didn't see much pushback. I mean, the governor is now using administrative agencies to implement the same executive orders that she implemented previously under the state of emergency. So, and I haven't seen enough pushback there. Now,
why? Why don't they want to fight about this? What do they think will happen in Michigan if this is allowed to persist?
From my personal experience, I don't think they understand the process well enough. And I think they're given counsel from Senate Majority Counsel and House Majority Counsel that may be at odds with what needs to be done.
Senator, by the time this happens, the entire world will be focused on this legislation. They will know the names of all these people. Yeah. These people will live in American history.
I hope so.
It's not going to be any hope. If it's going to come down to a certification of the vote by the state legislature, everybody's going to know this. So they'll know the scale. They'll know the stakes. If that's the case, how do you think they'll come down? I understand that the head of the state Senate is going to go, or may go to the White House tomorrow for a cup of coffee. Is there any truth to that rumor?
I've heard that as well. We'll see what happens. What people are looking for is leadership.
Exactly.
So why am I the one talking about all this on the media, right? I'm a former Michigan State Senator. I'm a former candidate for governor. I'm a poll challenger. I was there at the Detroit AV Counting Board. I was there at the Wayne County Board of Canvassers. I've seen what's going on. I helped form an organization called the Election Integrity Fund. I've been documenting what's going on with this whole election process at my website at letsfixstuff.org. So we're getting the information out. People are hungry for that information, and they're not getting it through the mainstream media because of censorship, and they're not getting it from our elected representatives. People are desperate for somebody to stand up and say, this is what's going on. Please lead, take the helm, and let's get this into a fair and free and transparent election. They're not seeing it right now.
Senator, what's your give all the access points, your social media, Twitter, Parler, and how they get to your website?
Just go to letsfixstuff.org. I couldn't afford .com, so please don't go there. Letsfixstuff.org. And then, Twitter handle is PJ Colbeck, at PJ Colbeck. Facebook's just simply Patrick.Colbeck. I still have my Colbeck for Governor page because Facebook could not let me change the title of the page. But but that's where I got most of my followers, if you will, on social media. So feel free to go in there and don't get excited. I'm not running for governor again. I don't have the money. So, but we're getting the word out there, and that's how we're sharing the information to everybody. And that's what people are hungry for. They want somebody to step up and lead, and I'm waiting for somebody in our state legislature to go off and do that.
Okay, I want everybody in our audience to hit that website right now. Senator, thank you very much. Great patriot. We're going to be back in a second. Bunch of breaking news, and we got our co-host Matt Gaetz. I want to pick his brain.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Okay, you're back in the war room. Want to ask our co-host, Congressman Gaetz, who's also a great lawyer, but also is a member of Congress. Are you feeling it in Michigan? Do you feel that because the whole world's going to focus on these things? These House of Delegate guys and the state Senate people are going to be raised up to a level. People in India will know who some of the individual names are. Do you think have you seen so far the courage there that's going to take to make some of the calls that are going to have to be made?
I spent 6 years in the Florida legislature. I've spent 4 years in Congress. In my experience, you try to start with the greatest universe of people willing to hold the line as possible, and you recognize that over time, pressure is going to shed that group of people, and you hope you've got enough to complete the mission. It is far more difficult when you hear the former senator from Michigan saying, well, I'm looking around and I'm hoping that someone in our state legislature will step up and demonstrate leadership.
You're saying when you have nothing, you're starting like with that.
Yeah, when you sort of have to grow the enterprise from, a guy who ran for governor and is a former senator and clearly knows his stuff. I mean, he's a very bright man and knows what went down here. But you need somebody wearing a legislative pin in these states to step up and say, follow me. I'm going to fight for our voters. I'm going to fight for a legal vote. I'm going to fight for the country. And I'm hopeful we'll see those folks emerge. But in the absence of them at any scale, it seems to present a real challenge.
We just have some breaking news in Pennsylvania.
Yep, coming out of Pennsylvania, we discussed the State Government Committee passing the audit yesterday, and now the full House chamber has passed that same legislation.
And so when does it go to the Senate? It goes to the Senate tomorrow?
It heads over to the Senate.
So we'll see a profile.
What are the time triggers on that?
I
we are in a race against the clock. No,
we're burning daylight right now, right? Don't you agree?
I would.
You've got the courts going this way, the legislature's going this way, the process to certify going. They're concurrent.
Yeah, the electoral college process is like a train that is going to get to the destination, right?
On the 14th.
Yeah, and the question is, when we arrive there, are we going to have the sufficient goods from the standpoint of evidentiary development to really make the case and throw this thing to the House of Representatives? And what we want to ensure is that we don't just kind of send all this off to committee land and then wring our hands and wet the bed at the end of the day when they start certifying electoral college votes.
You're one of the voices that the president listens to. You were on the plane there in the last couple of weeks when he delivered this massive game day victory. People are saying this is the end of democracy. Other people said today this is a coup. Krebs, who ran DHS, said it was the scariest hour and 45 minutes of television in American history. You've got hyperbole all over the place. I know that publications are trying to track you down right now, but what the president said about Kemp today, he's not happy, right? What would be your advice, given the state of play, of how you've seen it in the press conference and you see what's happening in Wisconsin and Michigan, and you're sitting there in Nevada, you said, hey, there's a lot there, right? But to make it orderly, what would you recommend to the president and the team?
Well, to the legal team, I would suggest we have to find the state where we can get to an evidentiary hearing as quickly as possible, and we need to prevail in that hearing with some relief. Winning or losing a series of hearings judging the sufficiency of allegations on paper is not going to get us to where we need to go to ensure that illegal votes are not counted and that they don't sway this election. That would be my advice to the legal team. To the political team, you don't win fights without champions. And we got to go cultivate some, and we got to go and buck them up. We got to find some of these folks in Pennsylvania. And I know there are some folks in the Pennsylvania legislature who see this for the fraud that it is and who want to clean up their act and who don't want to be a laughingstock for the country and for the world. But we got to get those folks. We got to get them in prime time. We got to build them up, because this is not going to be a deal driven by like the Jim Jordans and Matt Gaetzes up in Congress. Like, we're going to need people fighting this thing out, slugging it out in state legislatures first, and we got to curate those champions.
You're a big believer in the theory of victory begets victory. You have said, and you've told the legal team and the political team, you got to focus on flipping one. You need, if you won, the dominoes may fall, but even if you just get one, Biden's backed into a corner because it shows the thing was illegal. If you had to talk to the legal team today to focus on a one, we got a couple minutes left, Matt Gaetz would focus on which one. If you had to put the chips on it, and I said, I got to get one, I got to get it before Thanksgiving because I'm running out of time, where would you go?
Georgia is the state that seems to be moving in the president's favor with the most rapid trajectory, even though, as we heard from the reporting directly from Georgia on this program, the governor is sort of absent. And so I think that there we've seen the most movement. We've seen these new ballots found almost each and every day. You know, they're finding ballots in Georgia. And so I think I'd play hard there. But these Wisconsin allegations that Boris was talking about are equally as serious if you can get to the remedies.
So that's interesting. We even said, hey, Nevada's blatant. You think Georgia and Wisconsin are lower hanging fruit just if you had to get the one?
You know, the margins in Georgia, I think, are going to be so slim when we finally get down to these ballots. You're not going to have to show as big a contaminated universe as they're going to have to show in Nevada. But I think in Nevada, the evidence is so clear because they had a whole operation out there in the West Coast to get these California woke-topians voting in Nevada, even though they lived in California. And some of them were voting in California, too.
Okay.
A little bit of breaking news. Maricopa County Superior Court Judge John R. Hanna just said they are not going to delay the certification in Maricopa County.
So this is going forward. It's a great Republican official out there. Didn't even sit through the.
Do people get that? Like, do people get the fact that we had an opportunity in Maricopa County to scrutinize and review these machines, and there was a real problem in Maricopa with the inserting of ballots, and then it was like a damn traffic light. There's a red light that goes off, a green light. It's all counterintuitive, and the Republican designated official, did she have like a hair appointment day? Maybe some dental surgery with no Novocaine? What could be more important than showing up on the day when they're talking about processing the machinery and testing its validity? I mean, President Trump did what he had to do to win this election. He got 8 million more people to vote for him this time than last time. But when you look at the Republican apparatus, the machinery we had to try to support and buttress the efforts of our president, we were not successful in every instance, to say the least.
Okay, short commercial break. We're going to come back with the second hour. We've got Darren Beatty, the former speechwriter at the White House, now the head of Revolver News. We're going to talk about Revolver, some of the breaking stories. Most importantly, he's been put on a new commission, and the left absolutely melted down. He's one of the brightest guys in the White House and one of the brightest guys in the conservative movement and in the Trump movement. He'll join us next on War Room Pandemic.